Welcome to the Grappling Grappling Rewind Podcast.
Welcome to this week on the Grappling Rewind Podcast. This week's show, we're going to recap Fight to Win 156. It was headlined by Junior Ocasio versus Kennedy Maciel Cabrinho Jr. We're going to recap Polaris gi squads, Europe versus UK. We are going to preview Fight to Win 157 and talk a little about a bunch of other events that are happening this weekend, including BJJ Stars and some other stuff that's coming down the pipe. As always, in the show, I'm your host, Mange, and the co-host.
Emil.
That was a super long intro.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot to go to fit in there, but
we got a bunch, and I'm looking at 2 or 3 different pages of news here, and I got kind of confused. So let's kick it off with a little bit of news before we get into all the recaps. A bunch of people got black belt this week, guys, that we cover all the time. Oliver Taza, Nicky Ryan, Ethan Cullinston.
I can't believe Ethan Cullinston didn't have a black belt. I didn't know
that. The 9-year brown belt, the only brown belt with the BJJ Heroes page, because he had so many accomplishments at Brown, they were like, all right, we got to have him a page. And literally on his page said the only brown belt we've ever had to give a page because he had so many accomplishments.
Are you serious?
Yeah. That's why I found out he was a brown belt. Because I was like, he's a black belt. I was new to the joke.
It's not even like he's a black. It's like, of course he's a black belt.
Yeah,
you know,
like obviously.
Obviously, if you win trials, you're a fucking black belt. If you sub everybody in trials, you're a black belt.
Pretty much.
That's fucking wild.
So now he's actually a black belt.
So he was a brown belt for 9 years?
I think it was like 9 years or something like that.
God damn.
Might not have actually been that long, but I should have looked this up before the show. There's a long-running joke that he was the world's best brown belt, and he'd been a brown belt for a very long time. And I forget how long, but I thought it was like some absurd amount of time.
Okay.
But
well, I'm glad he's finally recognized.
Now a black belt.
Yeah.
Very excited to see him continue to do literally what he's been doing for
years.
I don't know, for years at this point.
Yeah.
But congrats to Ethan, Taza, and Nicky Ryan. It's no-gi, so they've been fighting black belts for what? 5 years anyway?
Yeah.
Congrats to them now. The earning the rank is a big deal. And, it doesn't make it any less impressive that those guys compete in no-gi. It's a big deal.
Right.
Let's see what else. So we got a bunch of news. Where do you want to start? We have a bunch of cards that got announced, a bunch of matchups that got announced. We got some crazy news from certain grapplers coming out. Where do you want to start? Do you got a preference?
Muhammad Ali.
Muhammad Ali, was it 2018 world champion?
Yep.
Basically went like, yeah, I've done steroids in the past.
Yeah,
and there was a big article.
This is only like funny and newsworthy because the way that Maine and I found out about this was Josh sending a message
Weinstock
to the group,
of Grappling Rewind,
sending a message to the Grappling Rewind chat that's like, did you guys see this? Muhammad Ali talked about steroids, and both Maine and I were just like, yeah,
word.
And water is wet. Muhammad Ali is fucking yoked,
bro.
He's
awesome.
a fucking Adonis walking around. Yeah, and of course he's done fucking.
We have talked about it openly on the Grappling Rewind. We're a fan of steroids. Like, it lets guys be at the best level, do crazy superhuman stuff, recover properly for a very damaging sport on your body, and as a result, we get to see guys compete more frequently because they can recover properly. Yeah. Also, you get people like Muhammad Ali who look crazy, and they're awesome to watch grapple.
Yep.
So that got announced. This big article on Flow that includes some other information about steroids and some other grapplers that have been popped for steroids.
By the way, Muhammad Ali did not pop.
No, he did not.
He just talked about how he has in the past done steroids, and what he said actually was honestly, it takes away from the feeling of accomplishment, so I don't do them now.
Yeah, which it seemed like honestly, I really did appreciate the openness that he talked about it. He was like, "Hey, yeah. I've done it in the past.
Yep.
I don't really do it anymore because I didn't feel as accomplished when I won things." Really made no mention of how long in the past, when he done it, what events. I don't really care. I honestly don't think it's even a black mark against Ali.
It's not. Because
honestly, because I just don't, in our sport with so little testing, I don't really.
Actually, you looked it up in some of the more famous cases of people actually popping.
I mean, that's in Worlds for IBJJF, and we get a pop every.
I feel like
every other year
you get a sacrificial pop. I feel like USADA or whoever WADA fucking comes in and is like, they got the one person that gotta do it.
We get one.
Yeah, you pointed out Taina Porfirio actually has a pretty extended.
So yeah, in the article that came out on Flow Grappling, they listed a bunch of the champions that had been formerly popped for the IBJJF after the Worlds, after testing went in for steroids. And in the list, it has no sanction, only lost a result, and 2 year suspension, 1 year suspension. And Tamara Ferreira was listed as having a 4-year suspension. And for some reason, I thought that was only a year or 2 year suspension. I did not know until this article that was a 4-year suspension. So I'm not certain if that was lengthened due to her appealing the result, because I know that she was going through the appeals process, and that sometimes is a additional penalty for a results appeal. But I didn't know until this article that she had been banned for 4 years, which kind of sucks because she is one of the most dominant women at the upper weight classes. So to see her out of competition for so many years was new information to me. So, yeah, funny article, and everyone from the Grappling Rewind kind of goes, yep. We
Sounds about right.
We compete in an unregulated sport where there's one organization that does one test a year. Guys are probably going to juice. I really do appreciate Ali kind of coming out publicly and going, yeah, I did it in the past.
Yeah.
Because hopefully that eliminates a lot of the stigma around being able to do it safely, maybe.
So far, the times that I've heard Ali react to things, he seems like a pretty level-headed dude.
Seems pretty genuine, which is cool. I don't know if I've ever done an interview with Ali. I think I'd have remembered being that close to him. Now, I never interviewed him, but he always gives good interviews. He's on Instagram Live a ton and talking very candidly. It's nice. I appreciate that. Let's see. Moving on to other kind of less exciting news, but still pretty exciting news. I've lost my notes actually now. Bunch of matchups announced for this coming week. The SUG has announced a big card. Moving back to the MMA fighters versus MMA fighters kind of model. Headline on the card, we have Satoshi Ishii, former gold medalist.
Judo,
in judo, MMA fighter, grappler. We've seen him on a bunch of events. Quintet,
versus Mason
SUG,
Fowler.
Versus Mason Fowler.
Defending, of course.
Yep, who's defending. We also have, read those off on my other notes, Emil.
Okay. We got Cowboy Cerrone versus Raphael Dasanyas, which actually, you know what? I am kind of interested in that.
That's a fun fight.
I think both of those guys have really good grappling,
and they fought before.
RDA, I think, is a black belt.
So is Cowboy.
Cowboy is too.
Both are very accomplished grapplers.
I mean, Cowboy for sure is extremely dangerous
off
in his guard. Yeah.
I think that Rafael knocked him out with a liver kick in their fight for the title a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I think that was one of the first times where it was people realized if you need to shut Cowboy down, you go for a body shot. We also have Vader versus fucking Black Beast, which is going to be hilarious.
Derrick Lewis versus Ryan Vader.
All hope we get to see the just get up technique.
I want to see Derrick Lewis just stand the fuck up.
Yep.
Because it's honestly a technical masterpiece to watch him do it. Because it looks so dumb, but if you actually look at what he's doing, how he builds his frames and how he moves his body and how he shifts his hips, and then be strong as shit for no reason, it is something special to watch.
Inexplicably, we have Anthony Rumble Johnson versus Fabricio Verdum, which is going to be the most profound beatdown I've ever seen.
Kind of a weird...
In pure grappling.
Fight. Yeah, kind of a
pure grappling.
A weird match, considering Verdum is ADCC champion,
world
champion. We haven't seen a ton of those...
Is he ADCC champ?
Yeah, right?
I know he's a world champ. I don't know if he's ADCC.
I always see that match with Vinny with the armbar and think he won that match.
I don't know.
Whatever. Right now, he's world champion.
Either way, he's really fucking good.
Very, very fucking good. Versus Rumble Johnson, who is, again, not bad on the ground, good wrestler, but not world champion jiu-jitsu level. So that card's coming out. Interesting. I'm curious to see what the undercard's going to be. Maybe they're going to do kind of what they've done before and stack it with BJJ fighters. I'd be curious to see. There's some fun UFC level talent and Bellator talent on the card, so should be fun. Also coming up, that actually takes place on December 20th. Also coming up on November 28th, so in a couple weeks, we got announced. We got
You
Spider.
Are right. He is ADCC champ.
Okay,
twice over.
That's what I thought. I wasn't gonna say open champ or just weight at plus 99. I don't think he's an open weight champion.
99.
I think both were at 99. I could be incorrect about that.
I have to look it up.
Let's say
he's
at
100. No, that's world. The worlds.
Yeah,
he won worlds at 100. Yeah, I have to go through it. But
Fabricio
anyway,
Verdum, many-time world and ADCC champion.
Yep.
Also coming up is Spider Korea Invitational, the under 65 kilogram finals. They've got delayed, but now they are back November 28th. We have Gunchung Lee, or Gainshop Lee versus Paul Miao in the first round, and Josh Cisneros versus Kennedy Maciel in the first round. We're going to talk about Kennedy and a bit here on a Fight to Win 156 recap, where he looked phenomenal. Let's see what other stuff I got. You also have on Who's Number One, Kaynan Duarte versus Rodolfo Vieira taking place on December 11th. What are your thoughts, Emil?
My thoughts are Kainan's going to take it. I only say that because...
he took the last one?
Yes.
That I forgot about until you went, I'm pretty sure he's already beat Rodolfo. I went, no, he hasn't. And then you went, yeah, Spider Korea final. And I went, oh, yeah, he did beat him.
Yep. And then, Rodolfo's only
he hasn't been super
competitions
active.
Before that was the CBD back in 2018.
Yeah, black belt CBD, where he took that. It was a $40,000 prize.
Well, yeah, he has a win over Kit Dale and Muhammad Ali in that one.
Yeah. He looked good in that, don't get me wrong. He's looked good since he's been in the UFC. He's been in the UFC for probably about a year now, Rodolfo Vieira. But you're coming back into grappling versus one of the best young up-and-coming stars, ADCC champ, like Spider champ,
strategic genius,
world champ, crazy good. The old guard versus new guard. I'm excited for the fight. I just don't know if the result's going to be much different, but it still should be a crazy good fight on Who's Number One. Also coming up, we have Michael Musumeci versus Thiago Maceda on Third Coast Grappling, their big card on December 19th. So that should be a lot of fun as well. Mikey Musumeci moving up, I think, one weight class to take on Thiago. I think Thiago is feather or light feather, and Mikey has historically been, I think Thiago is feather, Mikey's light feather, or rooster weight, depending on what Mikey shows up. So that should be really cool. Let's see what else. So if you like the show, please share the show to like a Facebook or to any place that you kind of are active with content. That is the biggest way that it helps us expand the show. And if you get an opportunity, you like the show, please share it out. That helps us a ton. We also have a Discord that I got the 2 messages this week on, kind of out of the blue. Like, hey, do you guys have a Discord? We do have a Discord. If you want it, message us. I can give you the invite link, and you can talk to us there as well. In other news, what do we got? Oh, yeah, Yuri Simões makes his ONE FC debut facing Fang Rong on November 13th. So that's this weekend. Really curious to see how he looks in MMA, given you're making your professional debut on the main card of a major organization. I'm not familiar with Rong, but I'm kind of less familiar with a lot of the ONE FC roster. I've only sort of recently shifted back into watching as much MMA as I used to probably back in 2014, 15, before we kind of took on the Grappling Rewind, and I watch all the jiu-jitsu now. So what do you think, Emil?
Yeah, I'm excited to see him. I think we all as grapplers are curious to see how some of these like top level guys do it, and especially if it takes them out of jiu-jitsu for so long. You're like, all right, I want to at least see some, if you've been out of jiu-jitsu for this long, please be good. He did ADCC in 2019. He injured his knee going off the mat. Yeah, but we used to see him a lot more.
Yeah, we did.
A couple of years ago.
But I do appreciate if you're going to walk in MMA like he did. He kind of did what Gary Tonin did and kind of took a big step back from competition. Like, look, I'm going to focus on MMA. And you've seen a bunch of striking videos of him on Instagram, which have looked, interesting. So I'm curious to see what he looks like. I hope that we see kind of a grappling clinic here because I'm a fan of Yuri, and he gave a really interesting interview on one of the Flow Grappling podcasts a while ago that was super insightful about his transition over, what he was looking to do, and it was honestly a really good interview. If you're curious about his transition, you should definitely go find the interview. I do not know which Flow podcast it was on. It was either on Who's Number One or Fistful of Collars, so you should listen to it because it was super insightful about that transition and an enjoyable interview. And other news, ADCC, European, Middle East, and African trials have been postponed. We kind of talked about it last week, I think, but the announcement came officially this week that those trials have also been postponed. That kind of goes hand in hand with the postponement of ADCC World Championships that were going to take place in 2020 in Vegas in like a year, pretty much September next year, but now have been pushed into the beginning of 2022. We talked about it at length last week. If you're curious about our thoughts about that, go find last week's show. It's in the news section. In the first 4 or 5 minutes of the show, we talk about it. We're both super supportive of it because it makes a lot of sense, and we get to see higher quality of athletes and see the trials happen.
It sounds worse than it is. It's really only a few months in terms of postponing. So
Yeah, and you get a really awesome product and event, and guys that you don't know potentially get to do crazy stuff and have breakout performances. Also this week, Copa Podio happened. I didn't get a chance to watch it, but there was apparently some really good matches and some great performances from some guys from Studio 84. So you should definitely try to watch that if you get a chance. We don't get a chance to cover it this week because we had a bunch of other events to cover. Okay, that does it with news. You want to move into the recap section?
let's do it.
What do you want to start with? Want to start to fight? Want to start with fight to win? Want to start with Polaris?
Polaris, man.
All right, man, let's do it. So, moving on to our recap of Polaris Squads 2. This is the first Polaris Squads event that has taken place in the gi. The previous one was a lot of fun, but it was no gi. Only had one submission. Polaris Squads UK versus Europe had a lot of submissions on it. Where do you want to start and how do you want to do this, Emil?
Just real quick, this is a team-based format. It's what, 8-on-8?
8-on-8, you have 4 grapplers that are under 75 kilograms and 4 grapplers that are under 95 kilograms
On
for
each team.
each team.
Yep.
They can be matched up with any person from the other team. You have to submit your match order beforehand. If you're really curious on how the format works, they explain it in the first couple minutes of the event, but basically it works like Quintet. It is a team battle format, but it is contested in 2 different halves, each half containing 40 minutes. So if you get a submission early, you keep going. So potentially you can see the same grapplers rotate in. If you get eliminated, you just have to you're out until your entire team has run through. So
Yep.
yeah, you're just going to see repeat people through the first half and into the second half.
And so you're just trying to rack up points for your team by getting submissions.
Yep.
That's the only way to get a point for your team.
Yep, you submit them, you get a point, and then you move on. That person gets taken out, and the next person from that team comes in. I feel like after this many years, we should have like explaining Quintet style rules down.
Yeah, but this is a little bit different.
It is a little different, and then you've got timeouts, and you've got it's just the Polaris has a whole write-up on their website.
But the other
exactly
thing too is like
works.
it doesn't work like Quintet where like you can eliminate the other team. Like this is just you keep going until
it's a true it's a non-elimination team format basically.
Right. Yep.
So yeah, it's a team battle but with a twist. So where do you want to start with this one? I want to start with Team Europe showed the fuck up.
Holy shit. God damn. Like, this is real subtle too, because we've been covering these guys for a while. Like, obviously, there are a ton of talented grapplers in Europe, but to see them all together on the same team, you really begin to see how much talent Europe has started to pull together. A lot of these guys from the same teams, even I think
like Tommy and
I think the Tommy's Pulkkinen, right?
Espinen and Tommy, I think are
that's right.
boys.
Espen, yep.
Espen Mathisen. I can never pronounce his last name. Welcome to the section of the show where Maine atrociously butchers names. Viana called us out on that on Twitter.
That's
he
hilarious.
gave the show a plug and was like, "Hey, I apologize in advance, though. They're gonna butcher like a ton of European names and Brazilian names, or no, Portuguese names." Think what he called us out for, and I went, "You're not. I really have no wherewithal to defend myself here because you're not wrong." So where do you start on this one?
Let's just start from the beginning. We're gonna go down the match results, and then I have stuff I want to talk about the matches that ended in submission. So
okay,
round 1, we have Arya Esfanmaz versus Tommy Pulkkinen, ending in a draw. Sam Gibson versus Max Lindblad, ends in a draw. Bradley Hill versus Espen Mathiasen, I believe, ends in a draw.
So right now I was watching the event, and I was going, oh no. Like, they're not bad matches, don't get me wrong. They're fun matches. We're just not going to recap all the draws. I was going, are we going to have the same thing that happened versus the Nogi event where everything ends in a draw and it comes down to
and then
one
Langhaker
submission?
comes up and is like, nope. We have Marcus Nardini versus Tommy Langhaker. Langhaker squashes this one with a triangle. God damn, this is such a beautiful bread and butter collar sleeve setup. This is and what's really remarkable about this finish is just how fluid Langhaker moves his hips.
He's just really good. And so one of the things I love about watching Tommy Langhaker is he's really good for a submission format because I think someone on Reddit a couple years ago said it's like at any point in time, Langhaker can pull a rabbit out of his hat and submit you.
Yep.
And because he's just so smooth and he's super dynamic in how he's going to enter on you.
Yep. Yeah. And so basically as a collar sleeve grip, he's pushing the hip back with his foot. And Yeah, he just does a beautiful job pummeling that in, moving his hips, getting to the triangle position, securing the finish. It was beautiful.
Yeah, pretty
next,
quick too. It wasn't
so
it wasn't a ton. Like Tommy locks it up, and then you can see it's got really strong finishing mechanics and is able to push through.
So because Tommy wins, he gets to stay in. Nardini heads out. Tommy Langhaker's in the next match versus Bryn Jenkins, and fucking Langhaker does it again via armbar, gets the submission. This was wonderful because now we got to see Tommy's guard passing. Like in the match before, we saw his beautiful guard work, and now we get to see his guard passing. Basically, he tripod sort of like dives in for like a pressure pass, but he's really setting up a favorable over-under pass.
Which I thought was really interesting, kind of the way that Langhaker is always a super difficult guy for me to watch because his setups are like really unorthodox. He gets me watching something that I'm used to watching like this, and then he's setting up something completely different. Like I never see his setup. So for me as an analyst, he's really frustrating to watch because I'm like, oh yeah, okay, I gotta go back. I gotta tab back and like watch what he was actually setting up while he's doing something.
Yeah, he's very good at misdirection. So he misdirects with a tripod pass here, and gets Bryn to overcommit on his hips. He gets the over-under grip that he wants, and he moves around to side control, and when Bryn turtles, he gets to mount an S mount eventually, and arm bars.
Yeah.
Fucking wonderful.
Really tight armbar. I think this armbar actually injured Jenkins, and because later at the end of this round, he could not continue.
Hyperextended,
so he was given. So Team Europe was given another point as a result of Jenkins not being able to continue in the lineup.
Okay, next up we have Jamie Paxman versus Luca Coretta. God damn, Coretta finishes via reverse triangle here. Luca just has a beautiful backstep pass, comes around to north-south, and when Jamie's turtling...
So quick item, they pulled Tommy out. So in the Polaris, so why it makes sense, we're in the quintet format, Tommy would have to stay in. In the Polaris format, you can basically have a timeout and swap your active member out, and that's what Team Europe has done here.
I think you have, I can't remember how many subs you get per round. It's like 1 or 2.
Yeah.
But basically, you can elect to sub someone out, and then that means that they're fresh, and you can put a fresh person in.
So if you're looking through and like, okay, well, why didn't Langhaker stay in? That's why, because he was subbed out from Team Europe. Sorry, because I forgot
to mention that.
It's because it's so I'm used to the quintet formats where that is not a thing.
So Luca Coretta just has a beautiful back step, comes around to north-south, and when Jamie's turtling, he just gets a really nice reverse triangle and gets the finish there. So Luca stays in. He goes against Tyrone Elliott. That ends in a draw. Next up, we have Adam Adshed versus Leon Larmon. And Larmon has a fucking savage choke from the back. This guy, Leon, I was not familiar with before this, but I am definitely...
Josh was familiar with him a little bit. He's like, oh, he's really good. I'm like, cool, Josh. Knowing, like, I'm not going to say obscure European grapplers, but, like, yeah, they're a hotbed of talent. Josh was kind of schooled us today in the chat for, like, who this guy is.
Leon has a savage bolo game, and he was just all over it.
That was, like, I was surprised how smooth it was.
It's so smooth.
Because usually when you see a guy throw a bolo, like, there's a little jank, there's a little, like, the hips are not quite square, they're not quite, when they land on the back, there's a little bit of like adjustment after the fact to square up the position. That wasn't here. Leon just bolos and then ends up like on the back, like cleanly.
Yep. He's doing like leg pummeling while he's inverted, which is always like, okay, you're next level. Like you're not the kind of person that can only hit the bolo, from the De La Hiva, and like when you have that momentum, it's like, no, you can pause, readjust. And
the readjustment there for me was really impressive. Like, again, I'm not a big bolo player myself because my back is broken, amongst other things. But I really enjoyed, like, he was inverted, and you can see him making adjustments with his feet in order to basically finish turning the angle properly to square up Adam as they land, as opposed to trying to make that up after the fact, which you see a lot of players that not necessarily aren't as good at bolos, but when there's like an additional level of defense there, they have to do. And Adam was able to kind of take that when he was half inverted, and it was really, really cool leg work and hip work there to get it done.
So Leon comes up into mount, and he does another thing that I really like here, which is from mount, he's basically setting up a sort of like almost like a bow and arrow style grip, but it's with a lapel end, but it's the same concept. And he uses that, he like turns onto his hip and yanks that grip to force.
It kind of almost functions like an underhook in those situations.
A little
where you're
bit,
able
yeah.
to turn them basically from a distance with that grip,
Right.
while not having to be super close to them or have like rib control or hip control. You can use that effectively to spin your opponent because you have that outside control.
So Leon spins Adam and takes his back, and then sinks in the choke to finish. Leon stays on and faces Sam Gibson, and Leon finishes with a choke from the back. Again, Berimbolo battle. Leon and in this case, Sam is pretty proficient with them too. Leon is just more aggressive, and he's doing the like those diving rolls
From
where
like a really high up position too.
Yep.
Like he'll get into like the weave that you need from the Berimbolo from top position, and then he will just dive like deep over, like almost like what I would consider over committing on the Berimbolo, but he's able to hook his legs like really aggressively as he turns and throw both of their hips into line,
and he just
to
has
continue to fight through the bolo.
momentum on his side at that point.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter if you're deft with it. If he beats you to that roll, he's going to take your back.
Because he's doing it from so high and he's so aggressive with the jump over. And I thought that was a really interesting piece, that he's able to maintain control even kind of getting up as high. Because I'm used to most people kind of throwing the Berimbolo from like a lower position.
Yep.
He got really like squared, like really high up with his chest and shoulders, that it's just not a position I'm used to seeing the bolo thrown from as much. But
right.
this was the match that I was super impressed with this.
You know
Berimbolo
what it
work.
reminds me of? It reminds me of like, have you seen
Instagram technique is what it reminds me of.
No, it reminds me of how Gary Tonin does the ninja roll now.
Yeah.
Like Gary will fucking launch into that from like really high up. It's the
Or
same
almost like
thing.
his truck entries too,
Yep.
where he just sort of like he jumps into you or away from you, hooking you only with his legs, and his momentum carries both people over, and then he's able to make the turn first because he initiated it and enter into whatever leg position or like up position or back position he wants because he's made the initiation of position. But you got to be super confident in your entries and your control in the scramble to be able to do it, which is why we don't see a lot of people do it, because they're just not as confident in that level of like control in movement.
Yep.
So it was something special.
Next up, so it looks like Leon gets subbed out, and we have Arya Efansmaz versus
I can never pronounce Arya's last name.
Efansmaz. Yeah.
Esfamades. That was terrible. I
Esfamades,
apologize to all the European listeners.
Versus
on this one.
Adam Wardzinski, that ends in a draw.
I was honestly like, I thought that we'd see Adam open up a little bit, and he kind of tried to here, but Arya did a really good job sort of like stifling that, not letting Adam get too deep on stuff. Adam tries at the end for an armbar, but he just runs out of time. It doesn't have enough time, and Esfand does a really good job defending.
Arya. But yeah.
Arya.
Next up,
bad.
we have Tyrone Elliott versus Dinu Bugalet. Bugalet wins via Ezekiel choke inside the guard.
You've seen this highlight going around. And even the commentary, I think the commentary here did a really good job of explaining exactly what was happening with the choke.
And I mean, like, respecting the choke, too,
Yeah.
like, not like being like, oh, this is like whatever. It's like, he was like, no, you don't want to extend them away. Like, they did a good job
You
of
can
being
tell someone
like,
on commentary
has
been
been
put
choked.
to sleep with this
Yep.
choke, because
Yep.
there was a level of respect here for the choke that you do not typically hear on commentary.
Yeah.
And when I'm watching it, I'm like, that's tight, but and then I've thought all the times I've got choked with this, and I went, we trained with a guy that's particularly lethal with the Ezekiel choke from all positions, and
You're talking about Dr. Zay? Yeah.
yeah, he chokes people from many positions, but I loved the hand positioning here. Like, there's two Ezekiels you can do. There's like a bullshit positional Ezekiel where like it hurts and they kind of have to address it, and then there's a difference of hand position. I typically notice that you'll notice where the guy turns his knuckles to finish the Ezekiel. This one had the hand positioning that you need to make the choke really, really deep and actually put them to sleep. It was a deeper hand grip, and the hand was actually turned over into the neck, as opposed to typically when it's done straight, it's just like, I'm trying to annoy you and push on you.
And
yeah, if you don't do anything, I'll choke you. But this one actually was actively working to change the angle on the choke. But from the guard is super ballsy.
Yep.
Because you're taught to never do this from the guard, because depending on how you do it, it leaves you very exposed for the armbar. Because basically all the guy has to do is your hands are both committed on the neck. They have to lift their hips up, turn over, and you, in effect, give them an armbar.
Which Tyrone was trying to do.
Trying.
Dinu is a beast. And Tyrone got put to sleep.
He just pressured him down, and then he goes, what I love is he almost goes for the sweep here at the end. He loops under the leg, and then you see him start to push, and then the ref immediately goes, oh, he went to sleep.
Yep.
And so I love that changing of the angle at the last second was just enough for Dinu to go, okay, like, and lock it in the kind of at the final amount he needed and put him to sleep.
Next up, we have...
this is my match of the evening is that, because we never see that, and it's crazy to see.
Dinu stays in, and he faces off against Marcus Nardini, ends in a draw, and that is the last of round 1, with Team Europe up 6 match points to 0.
They were up 5, and then because... who couldn't continue?
Bryn.
Yeah, Bryn couldn't continue. They were up. They got an additional point for that. And so they're up 6 going into the second half, the second 40-minute interval of fights. And at this point, I was losing my mind. I was like, that was crazy.
Yep.
Very, very very action-packed. Do you want to talk about the super fight, or you want to talk about...
We'll keep going here.
Okay,
so in round 2, we have Sam Gibson versus Tommy Langhaker. Langhaker via cross choke. Oh, damn. He was definitely channeling like old school Hodrick Gracie here from mount. He was doing the like, I'm going to turn your head with my forearm, and then I'm going to grip, and then I'm going to turn your head the other way with the other forearm.
This looked miserable
in
the position. Because they had a close-up of Langhaker's hand. They had a couple of times where they had like a close-up of Langhaker's hand, and you're just looking at him just forearming him right in the face, and the grip is super deep. But even, you show me a picture here, where the grip's not even that deep. It's kind of like a shallow grip, and it's just forearm pressure on the face to turn the neck so that he can get the grip deeper and then lock under for the cross-collar choke.
Yeah, it's savage.
What I loved about this, though, is he lets himself get rolled over while he's doing this because he knows he's got the grip. So basically, historically, if you look at like how Hodger does this, he finishes from mount to prove a point, maybe? I don't know. But he finishes from out. Langhaker, he's getting the choke. You can tell it's very, very tight. And he lets himself get rolled over by Sam. And as the rollover happens, Langhaker's able to kind of get a little bit more on the choke and finish it. And the commentary team did a really good job of explaining exactly what was happening here and like why Langhaker would let himself get rolled over, because he knew he had the choke. So that was cool. Again, the commentary team, I think Dan Hardy was on commentary. I forget who else was on commentary, but like they were killing at this event. Big props to those guys.
Next up, we have Tommy staying in to face Bradley Hill, ends in a draw. Jamie Paxman faces Espen Mathiasen, ends in a draw. Marcus Nardini faces Max Lindblad, and that ends in a draw. Adam Adshed versus Tommy Polkinen ends in a draw. Arya Efanmaz versus Adam Wardzinski ends in a draw. Tyrone Elliott versus Leon Larmon. So here's Leon's re-entry here. Leon choke from the back. Dude, this was insanely savage. This was his hands down his most aggressive bolo roll. So Leon is standing and Tyrone's putting him in De La Hiva, and Leon stuffs the far leg in between, and then from full standing he dives over his shoulder into a bolo roll.
Ballsy.
Yeah.
Like ballsy move here, Cotton. Because usually when you see this, it forces a scramble and the guy reguards. You don't usually see it actually like work. It does. It's not a thing. And when's the last time that you can recall in a professional match at the black belt level that you've seen a standing De La Hiva roll or standing bolo entry off of De La Hiva? Can you point to a match where you might recall it?
I can't think of one.
No, I know matches where guys have tried it, especially in Nogi. But I don't know a single match that I've actually seen it executed and like pulled off.
Yeah, it was disrespectful. Like
it kind of was.
It was really good.
There were some great comments on Reddit on Instagram about like the Team UK and like the bolos that Team Europe was putting on Team UK, and this is I think kind of what everyone was pointing to of just man, it was
Leon is good.
beautiful technique, and it's just, again, you don't see it. And so it's really cool to actually be able to see something like this in competition at the black belt level, because you typically just don't see it.
Yep. Next up, we have Sam Gibson versus Leon Larmon, ends in a draw. Bradley Hill versus Luca Anna Coretta, ends in a draw. Arya Efanmaz versus Dino Bucalet, ends in a draw. And that concludes it with Team Europe racking up 8 match points total.
And winning 9-0. Really great showing from Team Europe. I don't have a whole lot more to say. They looked phenomenal.
Yeah.
Like, that whole team looked phenomenal. But again, if you look at the teams, I'm much more familiar with a lot of the guys from Team Europe. I think of the 8 guys, 6 of them have BJ Heroes page. The 2 that don't have pages, I was actually like, wait, these guys don't have pages? I think Tommy doesn't have a page, and maybe it's Espen doesn't have a page either. I was like, wait, what? Like, these are all... Pulkkinen, yeah. These are all top-level European grapplers, and it's cool to have them showcased. I'm very curious to see if we're going to see them brought back for Nogi, if we're going to see them take on, because potentially there was some discussion about Team Europe versus America. I don't know how you do that now, but I would be very curious to see how this team of Europeans went up against some of the best American gi players. At the end, you're going to miss a lot of your really small guys like Musumeci, but I'm curious to see like how a guy like Keenan maybe would face.
I think Keenan would be perfect.
I think also Keenan represents American Jiu-Jitsu, so it's a perfect. He's also like a perfect like team captain for Team America, which sounds really weird to say in Jiu-Jitsu. The Team America World Police Jiu-Jitsu guy. There's also a bunch of other like gi guys I would love to see. I'm curious to see who they'd be able to get under 75 kilograms for the Americans, but I know there's a whole host of guys that just look, fantastic. I think Jimenez would be a really fun guy to see above 95 as well in the gi. It'd be a lot of fun. Big fan of the format. Like, dude, it showed up. I was very, very pleased. There was one no-gi match on this card, and it was a match between, for the featherweight title, between Ash Williams and, I'm looking through my notes here and I can't find it. That's the problem. Ash Williams and Tom Halpin. Ash Williams looked really good, controlled. He kind of went through some adversity at the beginning of the match, but at the kind of midway point of the match, really turned on the afterburners and just put really great top pressure passing, up on top and really dominant on top, gets in the match, gave a great interview at the end of it, talking about, he wants to be at 66 kilograms. He may go down to 61 kilograms, but he's here to face all the best guys. He wants to represent, UK at ADCC, be the first UK champion. And so really good performance to do that. Overall, great event. If you have Fight Pass, that's where it was. I wish on Fight Pass they would put the little dots where submissions and rounds starts like they used to. But they haven't been doing that as much since a lot of stuff moved over to ESPN Plus. But it was a great event on Fight Pass. Fight Pass is turning more and more into like a grappling service, which I'm a fan of. Any other kind of closing thoughts, Emil? It was a lot of fun. So moving on to our recap of Fight to Win 156. This one was headlined by Kennedy Maciel versus Edwin Junior Ocasio. And that one ended via armbar, and that was submission of the night for the black belts.
Yeah, Kennedy got the armbar, and that completely... delightfully surprised me. I did not see that coming.
We kind of talked about it last week. Like, Junie had the much more submission huntery style here, but
dude, I'm happy to be wrong here. I mean, Kennedy looked fucking amazing. There was numerous points during this submission sequence where Kennedy just made really wonderful adjustments. So off the bat, like basically the submission sequence begins when Kennedy's doing an awesome like double under stack pass on Junie.
Dude, the setup of the stack pass was great. He basically disengages, comes back in, and then he dives under Ocasio. But when Ocasio goes to roll over his shoulders, Kennedy does a really great job of pushing him forward and kind of like almost planting his shoulders into the mat while lifting up his hips so that Ocasio is in effect kind of stuck in that position, and then he can sort of continue to work from the double underpass.
Yeah, does a really awesome job controlling there. Eventually, he turns Junie over, so Junie's turtled. And here, Junie comes up. He kind of like hulks up, and the position that you can think of this as is it's almost like a fireman's carry, except instead of your head being on your opponent's hip who you're throwing, your head is in between their legs.
Yeah,
Okay.
basically. And it's a really common like breakout we see from Nogi, where it's like you have a guy in top position on turtle. He's overcommitted on the body. He's almost like chest to chest. He doesn't have a huge point of control. He doesn't have like a front headlock or a neck or an anaconda grip or like a lat grip on your shoulder. And so what you'll do is you'll just lift out. You'll either throw them off the back or they'll have to slide off the front, and it disengages the position. It's a really, really common thing we see in Nogi. We saw it in like Rodriguez versus Ali. We saw the exact same thing happen here.
Right. And so what you have is Junie is basically bursting like straight upwards on his knees. And Kennedy is on his back, almost like completely off the mat, doesn't have any hand grips on Junie. The only thing that he has is one leg is behind Junie and the other leg is in front of Junie's neck with Junie's neck sort of in the crook of the knee, right?
Yeah.
And what he does here is tremendous. Kennedy stomps out with that leg that is over Junie's neck, and it basically whips Junie's head back and off balances him, and Junie falls flat on his back, and Kennedy lands in basically a spiderweb position and snatches up the arm immediately.
Sorry, continue, then I'll cut you off after.
No, if you're going to talk about this, like, jump in now.
No, I'm just talking about the speed that it happened. I mean, it's like from the time that Junie starts to rise up to the time that Kennedy has made this transition, stomped the leg down, moved the other leg into position, is about a second and a half. Like, there's a collection of frames of this match that you can see where the actual transition is happening. It's crazy fast. And one of the hardest things in jiu-jitsu is to snatch something up when you have no other grips. That's why like you don't see a ton of arm drags, because like you have to snatch something in a 3D space and get it. Kennedy is in a really strange position, getting thrown off by Ocasio. He's usually what we see pretty much every other time except for this is the guy gets thrown off and they have to re-square up. But for Kennedy to keep his leg in front here and have the wherewithal to like actually change the leg positioning in front, turn it, stomp down on Junie, get the other leg involved, while then looping for the armbar as Ocasio falls down and getting everything tight enough to actually kind of start fighting for the armbar. It's a crazy transition.
It's crazy, and this is only the first portion of it. This isn't even where he finishes the armbar. So Junie he snatches up a Kimura grip, and off of the Kimura grip, he goes for a near back take. And this is where Kennedy just, oh my God, like he uses almost like a collar tie to snap Junie's head down. Mm-hmm. And then he dives for an underhook on the far leg to start to roll Junie. And Junie's not rolling, but it doesn't matter. What Kennedy does here is, so he has this collar tie, and he basically, and his leg is now no longer in front of Junie's neck, it's behind him. So what he does is he releases the collar tie and allows Junie to posture up, and then kicks his leg over into like a traditional armbar position while he's snatching the arm up for the armbar. It's insane. This is even faster than the other. I mean, this is literally, I think there was like 3 frames where I was trying to like
get a screenshot for notes.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, he hits it, and it is a instantaneous tap.
What I loved here is the collar tie. You mentioned it here. It's underrated because Kennedy doesn't have any ability to keep Junie postured down. His legs are not in a position where, in like a traditional armbar, you can kind of lean your legs on the back of the head or the shoulder or something. There's nothing in this position because Ocasio's trying to get up and Kennedy's trying to get under to turn him back over. There's nothing to stop Ocasio from basically continuing to rise up. So Kennedy puts his collar tie in and then forces Ocasio to sort of lift him with the collar tie as it's flexed in order to get the arm across. It was just a beautiful sequence. It reminded me a ton of the sequence that Demetrius Johnson hit Ray Borg with in the title. It was like, I think he called it the Mighty Whiz Bar, which is DJ, name your stuff better. But he goes to suplex Ray Borg, and then in transition in the air, he jumps off, he snatches the arm, and goes for the armbar. It reminded me a lot of that sequence there, where there's just all of these little adjustments happening while someone else is in transition in sort of 3D space. Especially like the complete break of contact in the initial sequence to start getting the Kimura grip. Beautiful technique. One of those things that I love to watch, but probably will never be able to replicate. And that's, again, partially why I really enjoy doing the show. It's like watching high-level grapplers do stuff that I physically can't do makes my weekend.
Yeah, so Kennedy gets the armbar, gets the finish, gets punctuated win here with a really, really phenomenal finish. Yeah, man, Kennedy's savage.
Deservedly submission of the night for the black belts.
Yep.
Crazy sequence. Go watch it. It is definitely worth your time because I think the whole match is like 2.5 minutes. Really early into the match too. I was, again, surprisingly early. Completely messed up my prediction because I thought that Kennedy would be a little more pensive. Maybe would come out hard, but I didn't think he was going to come out this hard and then positionally work as hard as he did to kind of get the back and get to the sub. So,
yep.
Really, really neat, great match.
Next up, our co-main event, 155-pound black belt gi match, Sam Nagai defeating Marcio Andre via decision.
Gi match, a lot of work with the 50-50 on the feet.
Double-seated open guard too.
Mm-hmm. There was a big portion of this match towards the end of the match where Nagai it was a really interesting counter from Marcio. Nagai had a toe hold grip, and Marcio was trying to counter that with a straight ankle lock grip. And I thought that was super ballsy because that's not typically a counter that we see to a toe hold. Typically, a toe hold, guys will roll out or guys will like move in or they'll counter with their own toe hold. I don't really see a ton of toe hold counters with the straight ankle lock from this position.
Yeah.
It was a really interesting thing that Marcio elected to do. And the toe hold looked like really, really deep. It didn't look like a bullshit toe hold. Again, Emil and I talk about toe holds at the end of the match kind of being... but any footlock at the end of the match kind of being bullshit. But this toe hold actually looked really deep.
Yeah, it looked deep.
I thought it was really. I didn't get a chance to study this as much as I would have liked to figure out exactly what Marcio was doing or like how he was changing his position of his leg.
It's a little bit hard to tell too with the camera angle and like in gi as well. It's like it's sometimes difficult to isolate subtle leg positioning and stuff. But yeah, I thought the same thing. I was surprised that it was a straight ankle lock versus a toe hold, and the toe hold looked no joke. But
it looked like nasty.
I'm always really sensitive when I see that stuff because I have glass ankles, and if you even look at my ankles wrong, they'll pop. But some people their feet can bend like that, and
the meows.
The meows.
Who apparently Paula's getting his tooth fixed.
Oh,
that was not in the news section this week, but it should have been in the news section.
Sweet.
And I'm gonna have a hard time telling the two brothers apart now.
Yep.
But so that was the match. That was fight of the night for the black belts. Really a ton of back and forth leg work on both guys. Not a ton of positional work. Mostly both guys just looking for the sub via various foot locks and ankle locks and knee bar entries. But very action packed match.
Next up, we have Dom Hoskins defeating Robbie De La Rianda via decision. Jackson Nagai defeating Jefferson Garcia via choke.
On to the brown belt results.
Jeff Mock defeating Eric Naples via heel hook. Ian Morris defeating Ben Paris via decision. Sebastian Rodriguez defeating Chris Passarello via decision.
And that was Friday night for the brown belts.
Andrei Petrosky defeating Andrew Jones via decision. Daniel Sala defeats Mateo Nunez via cowboy choke.
And that was submission of the night for the brown belts. This was a super neat choke. Whenever I go through the results and I find a weird choke name, I always go back and talk about it on the show because Fight to Win have a huge collection of matches and they're all super fights, so you do tend to see a lot of really nifty chokes. This was a super weird choke and very frustrating because I've tried this a bunch of times and never been able to get it to work. Basically how this works is Daniel is almost like Mateo is turtled. He pulls out his own lapel with his left side. He passes it across under the neck like he's going to go for like a hitman choke, but from the front almost, and then he grabs his own lapel and hand and rolls over into how you'd almost finish a clock choke, but with this grip positioning, and finishes this like an X choke. That if that didn't make any sense to you, go back and watch the highlight, watch the match. It is an extremely rare way to see this choke finished. and it's a tree. Like it's a way that I knew you could finish a choke, but I've never actually seen someone be able to finish it like this. So it's a treat.
Next up, we have Etta Brazeley defeating Joshua Adams via decision.
On to the purple belt results.
Savion Marinon defeats Charlie Livingston via decision.
And becomes the 185-pound no-gi champ. I love how Savion, we've been covering him since he was like a 45er, and now he's a straight-up 185er and has the title of purple belt. So since a blue belt 45er, moving up, great to see him become the champion. I'm very curious to see who he's going to face at 85 for the purple belts.
Grant Kircher defeats Sam McHale via split decision. Laura Griffith defeats Ansley Cox via ankle lock.
And that was submission of the night for the purple belts.
Nicholas Ponce defeats Nicholas Toscano via split decision. AJ Deshani defeats Kin Poirier via armbar.
And that was Friday the night for the purple belts.
Anthony Rodriguez defeats Nicholas Mamiso via decision. Bailey Luttrell defeats Aaron Orange via triangle. Caleb Livingston defeats Nicholas Lawson via ankle lock. Paul Barbioli defeats Mike Westcott via armbar. Donnie Ortega Jr. defeats Josh Blesher via decision.
On to the blue belt results.
Zaquan Rosario defeats Ian Platts via decision. Ryan Crescencio defeats Marquis McCrimmon via armbar.
And that was Friday the night for the blue belts.
Phil Abbott defeats Manpreet Dunjal via armbar. Nick Mancini defeats Shaquille Vaughn via calf slicer. And that was fight of the night for the blue belts. Patrick Brady defeats Zach Sokol via decision.
Sorry, I was on I must have skipped one because I lost like 15 seconds. I'm trying to find where you're on the results. So that was me.
David Cox defeats Max Livingston via north-south choke.
And James Van Arslan defeats Tyler Carroll via heel hook, and that was submission of the night for the blue belts. Mio could not see the screen based on where it was. So that is it for a fight to win 156. Do you want to move into the preview section now?
Let's do it.
What do you want to start with? Do you want to start with BJJ Stars, or do you want to start with Fight to Win 157?
Let's do BJJ Stars.
All right, so moving on to our preview of BJJ Stars. Who gets the 100,000, whatever currency Brazil uses? Reals?
Reals, I think.
Reals, yeah. That was a super uneducated thing. Yeah, whatever currency Brazil uses. So they have an 8-person tournament. I'm not exactly certain how BJJ Stars runs their tournaments. I kind of forget. I know they've run them in the past. I forget. I think it is IBJJF style scoring, but I don't have a bracket currently to look at. We have in this event, we have Leandro Lowe, Zaki Bahens, Mateus Diniz, Claudio Calazans, Otavio de Souza, Jaime Canudo, Luan Carvalho, and Gustavo Batista. Emil, make your picks.
That's
without a bracket, it's super hard. Actually, while I'm saying that, let me check to make sure there isn't a bracket.
I mean, honestly, these guys are all yoked. It's difficult to say off the top of my head.
If you had to make a pick,
I mean, Batista is fucking good. Obviously, Leandro Lowe is good.
Yeah, I kind of want to lean Batista or Lowe here.
Yeah, I'm leaning one of them. Like Diniz is really good, but and when Diniz shows up in the gi, he can beat anybody, but he's sometimes hot and cold.
Yeah,
which is why he doesn't have an IBJJF gold yet.
Right.
He does have an ADCC gold.
Yeah, and again, I kind of it's super hard for me to pick without seeing a bracket. Like I hate making picks without brackets.
I mean, yeah,
but it's also like cool.
List
like
your top.
Do Lowe and Gustavo meet up in the first round? It's like okay, that bracket looks significantly different because Leandro on any given day can upset anyone, and like he's obviously one of the favorites here.
Right.
And Claudio Calazans in the mix as well, like can upset anyone in here, and like it's just a very very difficult bracket to call. I do kind of want to lean Batista just because he's been much more active recently. We've seen him in a similar format in Third Coast Grappling. He has looked outstanding there. We just saw Mateus Diniz versus Gordon Ryan. Looked good, but ended up getting subbed by Gordon. Again, it was a no-gi match. This takes place in the gi. So, again, a significantly different grappler. But I do kind of want to favor Batista here, although it's stupid hard to do that without a bracket because you don't know who's going to get.
And also, this is just a stacked bracket too. So
it's a great bracket.
There's also a bunch of super fights as well. We have Claudia Duvall versus Gabby Garcia.
That'll be really fun. Again, we've not seen Garcia in the gi in a little bit here. I think we just saw her versus Elizabeth Clay at the most recent Who's Number One. She looked good against Clay, really putting that heavy pressure in. I assume we're going to see more of that from Garcia. That's Garcia's MO. That's kind of her pathway to victory. If she can get on top, if she can deal with if you can deal with her on the feet, you may be able to chance to get on top and pass, but most of the time Garcia is very, very disciplined and prescient, and she's going to push you into the ground and, positionally outwork you. So, I'm curious to see if that'll be the case here.
Next up, we have Patrick Gaudio versus Devante Johnson.
I'm actually really curious to see how this plays out. I think these guys have met before. Again, Johnson hasn't been a black belt for a huge amount of time pre-COVID, but I'm very, very curious to see what Devante shows up. If it's the Devante that shows up at Subversive, or if we're going to see like the Devante that's typically a little more cautious here. I do kind of want to lean Gaudio here, just because he has a little bit more of the black belt experience. But Devante is a guy that any given matchup, like he can
turn it up.
He can turn it up, and just like he has a speed to him that very few guys can match, because he's very, very long, and he's like super long for the weight, and he's not like heavy for the weight. As in, like, the way he moves is not like the guys at his weight class. So I do kind of want to lean Gaudio here, but seeing Johnson upset him really wouldn't surprise me here.
Next up, we have Raphael Lovato Jr. versus Dimitri Souza.
Now, I'm curious to see, because this one's in the gi. We saw Lovato versus Hulk in the gi, and Hulk was able to get an armbar on him. We haven't seen a ton from Souza recently. I think Souza's been in Brazil for a long time, and so we typically don't get a chance to cover him as much. I kind of want to lean Lovato here, but Lovato hasn't seemed as comfortable in the gi recently as in no-gi. But if his focus is shifting back to grappling, it wouldn't surprise me to see kind of him very, very quickly shore up everything he's got in the gi and, come back in standard form for Lovato.
We have Tamara Ferreira versus Bia Mosquito.
Should be a fun match. I think they've met before, and I don't know why I think Bia's taken that one. But again, I didn't pull up the records ahead of this preview because I didn't get a chance to.
We have Victor Hugo versus
Eric Muniz.
Thank you.
This should be a ton of fun. Muniz is a guy that's up and coming, brown belt, now black belt, highly touted guy out of Manaus. And Victor Hugo's looked, outstanding. This is going to be, I'm predicting this to be a very, very close match. I'm curious to see how tricky Hugo will decide to be, if he's going to try to sort of shut Muniz's game down or play from the guard and just slow Muniz down. Again, I could see this match going anyway. Both guys are very young, I think super heavyweights. This is probably the match on the card that I'm, aside from the tournament, kind of the most intrigued about, because I'm very curious to see how Muniz matches up with Victor Hugo, and if potentially going to see a diversity of leg lock game from Hugo here. Looks like it's in the gi as well. Should be a lot of fun.
Lastly, we have Amanda Montero versus Anna Rodriguez.
We saw them both last time on Stars. Should be a really fun matchup. I think the card is under $15 US. They have a discount code right now. I think for the final one, I think the final price is $15, but I think it's $12.90 right now or something like that. Should be a lot of fun. It's worth the money. I'm curious to see if they're going to do it again on Flow Grappling with the upcoming ones. I think they've only won one of them on Flow Grappling, but looks to be a really, really fun card, and I'm pretty amped for it. It's a middleweight GP. So moving on to our preview of Fight to Win 157, I only have two matchups on this card right now. We have Tom DeBlas versus Kodiak Fields. Again, DeBlas announced that he's coming out of retirement. Again, I think his last matchup might have been against Bruno Bastos. I don't know. That might have been one of the Kasai's a while ago. No, he had a match against Kaguya, the big 350-pound catch wrestler that he finished via knee bar. But DeBlas has announced that he's coming back and going to fight for ONE FC. So he's made a return to professional grappling and MMA. I'm very curious to see how he deals with Fields. Fields is a really big, a big dude. I don't think I don't think DeBlas is as big as Kodiak Fields. But again, we're going to see DeBlas most likely play from half guard, look for the sweep. I'm curious to see if Fields is going to play on the outside or really engage with DeBlas. It could really go either way. Also on the card, we have Wagner Hosha versus, give me 1 second to pull my notes up. Versus Gabriel Almeida. We've seen Almeida a ton on Third Coast Grappling and on Fight to Win. How do you think this one's going to play out?
It's impossible to tell. I mean, I've never really seen anyone be able to impose a game on Wagner. Like,
no, you're always going to kind of play Wagner's game.
Yeah,
regardless.
He's going to take away your A game
and likely. Happiness.
Yeah, and happy.
Wagner's gonna make you sad. Yeah. He's gonna make you unhappy to be there. And then after he's gonna apologize, which is like gotta be the craziest thing ever, is Wagner Hosha like collar ties you and kind of punches you in the face a little bit for like 10 minutes. He's like, sorry man about that. Which I think is really funny.
Yeah,
Wagner,
he's a super nice guy.
He openly talks about like doing super dirty stuff in the match and then like apologizing after, like, sorry about that.
Yeah. It's like,
I appreciate it.
Yeah,
man.
it's like, yeah, it's...
Look, if the ref's not going to stop you...
It's not even if they're... I mean, it's just part of the sport. It's just part of the sport.
I love it. I'm very curious to see. We've seen kind of a lot of... what's the word? Not hesitancy from Hosha, but he seems less willing to just sort of like barrel through guys. He really wants to tire you out on the outside with a lot of like collar ties and pushing, and like he wants to frustrate people into making a mistake. I'm very curious to see if he's going to be able to do that with Almeida. I assume this is no-gi. Again, with Wagner, it wouldn't surprise me to see him in the gi, but we've recently seen him a lot of no-gi. I think we saw Wagner in the gi in the last like 6 months. I forget what it was in. But, you know, I assume this is going to be a no-gi match. And that's really what Wagner wants to do. And now if Gabriel can get them down and, like, begin to control Wagner or even, like, elect to play guard here, which wouldn't surprise me if you're Almeida, I'm curious to see if Wagner's able to, like, establish a position with, like, throw bypassing like he likes to do, or if Almeida's going to start to work, like, actively from the guard and looking for, like, feet. If you really want to play the feet game with Wagner. Again, one of the best 50-50 matches we've ever seen was Wagner versus Tanquinho.
Augusto Mendes, yeah. Really, really good. Yeah, I don't know.
Also on the card, we have Aaron Harris, Frank Rosenthal, and a bunch of other guys on the names. They're not Seth right now isn't putting out the fight posters because they look like they're doing some matchmaking like very close to the event. But again, should be fun. I'm again a big fan of Wagner. I love watching him kind of do Wagner things and frustrate people. It always shows me like the guys that are willing to stick to a game plan and the guys that are going to kind of let Wagner, like play Wagner's game with him. And so it's always very, very dynamic and fun. I think that's all we got this week. What's your week look like? Anything else fun going on?
Trying not to get COVID, man.
We might be going remote. Yeah. In the future here, I would prefer to not get it, but you know,
Maryland is
we're going up.
Maryland surprised me, man. I thought we were a couple weeks out before peak, but that just happened.
It was today, baby, highest count ever.
But I did get to this past weekend. I got to go out to a cabin. Lizzie and I got a cabin and like went hiking, and it was awesome.
That's awesome.
So
that's sweet. I got permits today to go duck hunting again, and that's gonna be great. I'm going this Saturday and next Saturday.
Dude,
it's really fun. You ever like kayaked in the middle of the open like marshland at 2 in the morning, 4 in the morning?
No.
Pretty cool meal. I hate the outdoors. It was pretty great. It was super neat. So apparently that's the thing I do now is just go out duck hunting like every other weekend, or every weekend, and then go hunting. Like I never thought I'd be that guy. But yeah, not a whole lot else going on. Be safe. Everything's a little crazy right now. Just, wear a mask, be safe, and have a good time. Study a lot of tape for jiu-jitsu if you're unable to train safely. I don't really have anything else aside from that PSA. You got anything else, Emil?
Nope.
All right. As always on the show, I'm your host, Maine, my co-host.
Emil.
And we are the Grappling Rewind, and we will see you on the mats whenever that is. Stay safe. If you like the show, please consider sharing it on Facebook with the folks at your gym. It's the best way that we grow the show, and we really appreciate it. You can reach out to us on email.
We also have Instagram. We have Facebook. We have Twitter. We have Google Plus.
Until that shuts down.
We have a website.
If you have an event you would like to have us cover, please let us know. If you have a name, like most people do, and you'd like to have us stop butchering it,
Let us know.
reach out to us. The show is also available on YouTube, Spotify, in addition to iTunes and every other podcast service. We very much appreciate your time, and thank you.